What's going on, GemMint's? It's your boy Gem Mint. I am here with, man, this guy has been all over the place, writing for Dark Horse, for Valiant, for Marvel, for DC. What else? IDW, I think. We have a professional comic book writer. We have Cullen Bunn. What's going on, man?
Hey, not much. I feel like I haven't been all over the place lately. I feel like this is what you see right now. So
Right? Yeah, no one's really exactly. We're all quarantined. So thank you so much for coming on the show, and we get to pick your brain for a little bit.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
I want to give a huge shout out to Greg Katzman over at Valiant Entertainment for putting this together. When he said Cullen Bunn, I was like, man, I see Bunn every single week on a new comic book they review in multiple titles. So I got a few of them spread here. We're going to talk a little bit about what you got going on now, pick your brain a little bit, and see what you guys in the chat would like to ask Mr. Bunn. Sound good?
Awesome. Sounds good.
So, man, going over the catalog here. So, I first got into Cullen Bunn. When I got back into comics, Venom had just started on a #1. Rick Remender started Venom, right?
Yeah.
I loved the Agent Venom, the Flash Thompson. Then you came in and you kind of rounded out and finished off the run.
Yeah, so that was one of my. It wasn't my first Marvel project, but it was one of the first ones I did. So I co-wrote Rick's last arc. We wrote that one together.
Okay.
Which is where he dealt with the Savage Six and these awesome, crazy characters. And then I took over after that and finished out the run for however many issues that thing ran. But yeah, so we co-wrote the last arc together, and then I just kind of took it from there.
Cool. And so there was a character that showed up there who has recently come back into comics, Mania.
Yeah.
Was that an original creation of yours, or you guys created together?
No, she was Mania was a character I created. She wasn't. I introduced this character of Andy Benton in one of my early issues of Venom, and she was a student at the school where Flash was coaching.
Right.
She wasn't originally intended. I didn't intend for her to become Mania initially, but probably in my first issue or two of writing her, I said, what might be interesting is to give Venom a sidekick, someone a little younger, and yeah, then she appeared in she became Mania. And I had big plans for the character, but alas, sometimes those big plans don't play out the way you want them to.
Yeah, because now I guess what happens, Marvel gives you the call, says, hey, do you want to help out? Donny Cates is doing this Absolute Carnage run, and we're doing some tie-ins. So they bring you along to do Web of Venom, Funeral Pyre, and the Scream miniseries, right?
Yes. Yes.
So then I can't remember for the life of me, Scream, the original host for Scream. Is it Diana or?
Yeah, Diana. Shoot, you're gonna ask me. I can't even remember right now. But yeah. At some point over the last couple of years after I wrote Venom, someone took the symbiote away from Mania, so she no longer had a symbiote. Which look, other writers do different stories. But that never sat well with me. I never liked that.
Her having the symbiote?
No, I wanted her to. I thought she should stay Mania for a while.
Okay, gotcha.
And I tried to get back in and write other Mania stories in there. I've pitched Mania stories for years, but then of course things happen. That's part of a shared universe. Other writers do different things. The company has different plans. But they called me and said, "Would you like to do this Funeral Pyre one shot, which you can write an Andy story again," which I loved. And I loved writing Carnage. And then they asked if I wanted to write a mini series where Andy would become the new Scream and reveal how that would happen. So yeah, that all came, just little side projects that got her to where she is now. And I guess the new series is I think is pretty well received with the new Scream. So
yeah, I was looking because you wrote the 3-issue miniseries. That now they gave her a new ongoing, but you're not on that project. You just did the 3.
Yeah,
but I thought that was cool to make her Scream because that's always been a cool character, and especially with the Venom movies happening right now, they're doing symbiote stuff like Riot. Who knows if she'll show up or not. Right. But I thought it was cool to give Andy because she has more character development than we can't even remember the previous host.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Scream was a cool character, but she wasn't a person. I mean, she was a person. There was a host. But they never spent any time with her. Back, when Scream appeared, that was back in the day where boom, she's a supervillain. Let's have her fighting somebody. Let's, they didn't spend a lot of time with that character really. So it was nice to be able to give Scream someone who actually has a backstory and some other things have happened with.
No, that made a lot of sense. That was a good move. I like that. And I was so surprised. I think I say it in my new comic book day reviews that they have a new ongoing for Scream, and it's not like a limited series. It keeps going, which I think is super cool.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about your work on Valiant, man. I'm a huge Valiant fan. I really got into them with the reboot when they had all those deluxe editions. Yeah. So I read all those titles, and I absolutely love 2 characters. Now, I don't know if you created Roku and Punk Mambo.
So I didn't create either one of those characters.
Okay.
But yeah, they're both awesome characters. And I took them and tried to write them as if I created them. I've said it elsewhere. And I think it was Rick Remender who told me this years ago, take these characters and write them like you stole them. So, I was like, with Punk Mambo and Roku, I'm going to write a story where, if I get a chance to write them, let's do whatever I can, do with them. So
yeah, it's almost like if you write the definitive run, that's forever your character, right? Because I guess Roku must have showed up in Ninjak, I think it was.
Yeah, she was a Ninjak villain or anti-hero, a villain and an anti-hero. She's been both. Yeah. But
I love her. She is OP, but I love her. Yeah, I think she's awesome. Just like Punk Mambo, I was looking everywhere for the trade. I think I gave it away in one of our giveaway boxes we do. But I love her. First of all, her look is awesome.
Yeah,
and I love kind of like her freshness with like that kind of Shadow Man realm, because Shadow Man's more of like a serious character.
Yeah.
And you're dealing with more of life and death type of heaven and hell stuff. And then you got Punk Mambo, who's kind of like, she doesn't take any shit. Right. She's super cool. She's slick with it. And she's very nonchalant with like the magical aspect of the stuff that's happening around her. I think it really plays well.
Yeah, no, she's a fun character for those reasons. I love the supernatural side of the Valiant universe anyway. Mm-hmm. It's just such a rich world to explore there. And what's awesome is there are these different characters who can explore these different aspects. And yeah, Punk Mambo's great because she's tough and she has all this magical power, but that's not what makes her Punk Mambo. I mean, what makes her the character she is that she's willing to kick your teeth in if you step out of line, and she does that frequently.
She has no fear, man. She's very self-confident, man. I love her character. And Valiant, that's so true. They have kind of like a little niche for everybody. Like they have the supernatural stuff. They have the Teen Mutant kind of stuff. They have the Bloodshot aspect. So they do have a lot of different areas. If you guys aren't reading Valiant, man. So speaking of Valiant, you are writing the new Shadow Man title, right?
I am, yeah. So there's a new Shadow Man ongoing coming out. It'll be later this year. Dates are shifting a little bit because of everything that's going on. But yeah, later this year, and it's gonna. I mean, I've always liked Shadow Man because I like the darker stories. I like stories that about things that go bump in the night and everything. Mm-hmm. But this is a Shadow Man story that if you love Shadow Man, it's gonna be the book for you. If you've never read a Shadow Man series, you can pick this up and completely jump right on board and understand everything you need to know, and enjoy the book. And it's going to be exploring everything I love about horror stories. Every kind of horror subgenre is going to be thrown in there, but it's still going to be a superhero book with this character Shadow Man, who is sort of like the guardian between worlds. He protects our world from this other realm called the dead side. And when things kind of bleed through into our world, he's there to stand in the way.
Yeah, think like almost like Doctor Strange is with the astral plane, right?
Yeah. And Shadow Man's an interesting character because he is, he's really, he's got all this supernatural power, but he's kind of an everyman. He's not some high and mighty, Lord of magic. He's just like anybody else. So it's fun to be able to explore all these supernatural threats and all these strange occurrences through the eyes of someone who is not necessarily an expert in all of those.
I think he just got that kind of title handed down from him, if I recall. Yeah,
he got the title handed down to him, and he's bonded to the Shadow Loa, which gives him a number of supernatural powers.
The Loas, that's right. Yeah, that's cool, man. So yeah, glad to hear it's an ongoing too. So that's something that could have some legs to it. And I hear you're writing or working on another new book that hasn't been announced yet. Greg said it was cool if we can get a hint on what it was.
What? Wow. All right. You may be trapping me right now.
No, I mean, he told me it was
his head spinning like something out of The Exorcist. I can say that I am working on another another Valiant book, and it is also in the supernatural. It's on the supernatural side of Valiant.
Okay, cool. That's cool. All right, nice to know that you're working over there. I have some other things on the desk I want to talk about. So we talked Scream, we talked Roku, we talked Venom, Deadpool. So you had a stint on a couple of the little Deadpool minis, and they were collected in these mini busts. I don't know if you own any of these.
I have a couple of them. I wanted to call them the Omnibuns because it was all Cullen Bunn stories, but they wouldn't go for it.
That's a good one though. Well, yeah, they went with mini bus, and everybody was like, "Why? Is it because it's thinner?" And I'm like, "No, it's got a bunch of mini series." So you did what? Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe.
Oh man, the first
illustrated.
The first Deadpool story I did was Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe, and I think if I added them up at one point, I've written like close to 50 issues of Deadpool once you add all the different miniseries up, because I did Illustrated, Deadpool. Deadpool kills Deadpool, Deadpool Secret Wars, Deadpool versus Carnage. I've done so many Deadpool miniseries right now.
I like this comment from the chat. Cullen Bunn, why are you such a workhorse?
Because I like to eat, and I like to keep a roof over my head. And
see, Greg said it's not a trap.
All right, good. Thank goodness, Greg.
Yeah, I liked all those series. That was another one. That must have been what, maybe 5 or so years ago. Maybe more now.
Deadpool killed. The first one was more than that because it was very early on after I became a full-time writer. I was writing, I had a full-time job and I was writing on the side for a long time. And then at some point I took a leap to become a full-time writer. And Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe was one of the first like miniseries I was offered like early on. They called me and said, hey, we have a Deadpool series we'd like you to write. We don't know anything about it. We just know that it's called Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe. And I said, well, so I pitched them. Basically, I pitched the idea that Deadpool in this case was sort of the Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees of the Marvel Universe. And I just went from there. And that book, I guess people are just, Marvel readers are just sick and twisted and like to see their favorite characters get killed, because that book, and I think it still is, but for the longest time, it was sort of an evergreen book. It was like one of the best sellers. It's always one of the things I sell out of first at conventions. People just like seeing those characters get killed.
Yeah, because you have that combination with Deadpool. There's a cult following, and I think it came out around the time the movie was out or something around that time.
It was pretty early on. It was. There was probably talk of the movie when that was coming out, but yeah, it's and that really opened the door. That's why I wrote so many of those Deadpool miniseries, because they had the main series, but they wanted to keep something new and different kind of going on the side as well.
Yeah, I think that's a missed opportunity. With all those Deadpool issues you wrote, you could have had a solo Cullen Bunn omnibus. What'd you call it? Omnibun?
Omnibun. Yeah, the Omnibun. Yeah.
So you mentioned you had a full-time job. What did Cullen Bunn do before he was writing comics for Valiant, Marvel, DC, and all these titles?
So I was a vice president of marketing for a company that helped with corporate relocations.
Oh, okay.
So it was not
exciting.
Not exciting. No. I had that job, for 15 years. I was at that company, and the whole time I was trying to break in as a writer and become a full-time writer.
Awesome. Well, so you took the leap, and man, you landed, right? So that's awesome. What was the comic book that grabbed you, like that made you interested in comics? Do you remember the issue or the title?
Yeah, I remember the comic book that made me love comic books, and I'd read comics for a long while, and I always liked comics. Mm-hmm. But I read an issue of Micronauts that I bought off the grocery store shelf. Sure. Micronauts number 7, which is Micronauts and man things in it, and the cover was great, Mm-hmm. But there was something about that book that I must have read it, I don't know, dozens of times that day, because it was just, there was so much world building to it. Micronauts was a toy line that didn't have a storyline that connected to it or anything like that. But there was so much world building on that page in that comic book. I became quickly obsessed with it.
Yeah, there's like a huge following for Micronauts. That's funny.
It's still a bunch of us old timers still love it.
So you write a lot. You write a lot of comics. Do you still read? Are you still a fan of reading comics?
I am. I read mostly in trade these days, mostly collected editions, and I'm probably a little behind on all that. But I do still, I'm still a fan. I still love comic books, and I do some. I do a lot of. Speaking of old comics, one of the things that has really gotten me into comics in recent years is I take a lot of my old collected, old single issue comics, stuff that's never been collected in a lot of cases, and I get them bound into hardcover.
Oh, wow.
So I can put them on the shelf, just like the books behind you. So I have, these collected editions in the other room that are just all these, comics that I collected, and maybe they aren't in great shape or whatever. And I send them off, and a binder puts them together for me, and, designs a cover, and I can get some books that are a little different sometimes,
sure.
Aren't collected.
I'm sure the chat's going to go crazy because a huge draw of this channel is the omnibus, the collected edition. Yeah. So Cullen Bunn custom binds omnibus.
Yeah, I have
amazing.
I have about 30 or 40, maybe more than that now, of different ones, and it's fun for me because I can do things that you can't necessarily do if you're buying them off the shelf. Micronauts, for instance, that was a long series of 70, however many issues of the series, but right before the last couple of issues, there was a mini series called Micronauts and the X-Men.
Sure.
And so I was able to bind that into my book where it would fall in the storyline. So you can do.
Yeah, sometimes, the books aren't mapped out with everything, or maybe sometimes not even the right order. So that's awesome with the custom bind.
What really got me into it was I bought a couple of them of custom bound editions of Indiana Jones comics.
Okay.
And the comics came out there was an adaptation of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then there was an adaptation of Temple of Doom, and then there was an Indiana Jones series that came out, that was just new stories, and then there was Young Indiana Jones and all that stuff. But the editions I bought, the person who bound them put them in chronological order. So the when I open the page, the first thing I read is Young Indiana Jones, and then it goes up to Temple of Doom, which took place before Raiders of the Lost Ark. So that's first in the collection.
Yeah.
And then, so there's interesting things you can do with that I've always just I like that. I guess I'm a control freak. I like that kind of control.
Yeah, that's true, because that's one of those things where, like Star Wars, you can watch it with how it originally was released, or you can go chronologically, and then if you have those comics, you combine them that way. That's awesome. So that's actually going to tie in good with a question I have later. So I do see behind you, it looks like you got a IKEA Calyx set up. You got some figurines, or are you a collector as well?
Yeah. I have a couple of those Calyx shelves from IKEA. Because they are so great for storing comics and
how sturdy are those things too, man? I always recommend them to everybody.
Yeah, they're great, man. They're awesome. But yeah, so yeah, I collect that stuff. I'm not a diehard collector, but I have a few of the sideshow figures up here. Some of the characters I like, awesome. That I like to keep on my shelf. I have some statues over here on the, above, and that
spinner rack too.
I got the old spinner rack, and the top shelf awesome. Back there's a bunch of old toys that I, loved when I was a kid and stuff. So, I have a collection, but it's not. It's really more about just the stuff I loved and the stuff that inspired me and the stuff that, the characters that meant something to me in a big way. It's not necessarily the most well-maintained collection.
No, it's your own, right? You got to make it your own. That's for sure. And so let's talk about Bone Parish, right? So Bone Parish, that was through what? Was that IDW?
That was Boom.
It was Boom. Love Boom Studios, right? So so Bone Parish comes out. It's kind of like I guess you could say horror themed, or
it's sort of a crime horror story. Yeah,
do you have a lot of horror inspiration? Is that something that you're a fan of, that genre?
Yeah, I'm messed up, man. I'm a mess with it. I love all kinds of stories. I love crime and fantasy and superhero, but I always sort of gravitate back to horror stuff and darker stories, and even when I'm writing superhero stories, a lot of times I'll infuse some horror stuff in there just because it's who it's the kind of stuff I really that really speaks to me.
Awesome.
Bone Parish was a crime story. And it's a story about a crime family who's kind of gotten in over their heads in this new business. They become big faster than they should have. They can't, they're kind of being crushed by their own success. But the supernatural element of it is what they're selling is a drug that's created from dead bodies.
Right.
And when you take this drug, you experience a moment or a few moments of the person's life. So if you take this drug that was created from the dead body of a rock star, you can feel what it was like to be a rock star for a little bit.
Yeah, didn't they have like Jimi Hendrix body or something? I think
yeah,
Jimi
Hendrix. Yeah, they could be Jimi Hendrix for a little while.
So somebody asked me to ask you, was this inspired at all by Method Man and Redman How High? I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. No,
it wasn't. I've seen it, but that wasn't necessarily in my head when I did it. But
that's funny.
Yeah.
So Bone Parish, wasn't that option for something? Is there still talks about that becoming some kind of series or?
Oh yeah, there's stuff going on with it that I can't talk about, but yeah, but yeah, there's been talk about, it's been there's active discussions about it right now.
Yeah, it could be a little bit like an Ozark vibe with some more supernatural or something.
Yeah, and it's it's all set in New Orleans, which is a great, just an awesome setting anyway for so many different types of stories. But
I think that's also where Shadow Man is.
It is. Shadow Man and Punk Mambo both have because there's such a voodoo element to both of those characters too. So both of those characters are very rooted in in New Orleans, which maybe that's why they gave me the Punk Mambo assignment, or they thought of me for that, because I was doing Bone Parish, which is so heavily, New Orleans.
Cool. Let's give someone in the chat here, Bruce Johannes, big supporter of the channel with a $5 super chat. He's actually a good segue to another title that you've written, Six Gun. Is that show still a possibility? He's saying by Briscoe County producer, would be a great animated show as well.
Yeah. So, the Six Gun is, we did a pilot for it for NBC that's out there that has never, it's not out there for public to see, and NBC did not pursue it as a show for various reasons. But there has been continued discussions, and I think you'll be hearing some more about Six Gun in the very near future, whatever near future looks like right now, and near future in Hollywood terms. I think you'll be hearing some more about Six Gun soon, hopefully.
And Six Gun has the killer collected editions, man. Like those huge, they're bigger than absolute editions. Yeah, with the coffin and everything.
Yeah, we call them the gunslinger editions, the ones in the bookcases and stuff. And yeah, they're really beautiful, beautiful collected editions.
And I read a ton of your stuff, but one thing that I haven't read, but everyone's telling me I have to read it, is this Harrow County.
What? You haven't read Harrow County?
I've read like everything you've done, I think, except for that. Like, can you sell me on Harrow County? Like, what's a quick 2-minute sell on Harrow County?
So Harrow County is a story of Emmy, and Emmy has grown up in the backwoods, rural area, and she's always known that she's surrounded by things that go bump in the night. There are goblins in the woods and haints that are out haunting, different areas. But on the eve of her 18th birthday, she finds out that she may be the reincarnation of this infamous witch that was put to death 18 years ago, and that turns the entire town against her and kind of sets her on the run. And it's sort of a Southern Gothic fairy tale, really. But there's a lot of heart in it. There's a lot of blood. There's a lot of magic. It is, a lot of people say, if you could recommend one book to introduce somebody to you as a writer, I can't do that. But I can recommend two right off the top of my head. I always suggest Six Gun and Harrow County. Those are the two that I would most readily. I think they represent me really well as a creator.
That's all. I got to check it out. I think the 4th or 5th deluxe edition or library edition just came out, right?
Yeah. So there are four hardcover editions from Dark Horse, and that collects the entire first series. And we just did a new miniseries called Tales from Harrow County, which is set 10 years or so after the first series.
That's cool, like a little epilogue. Yeah, because I tend to pick up like every collected edition, even if I haven't read it. So at least I can read it and review it if I liked it or not. And everyone's like, dude, you don't have Harrow County? Like, what are you doing? Like, I don't know how it missed me, but I got to pick those up and check them out.
Those, you know, speaking of collected, those hardcovers that Dark Horse put out are just amazing. So.
Yeah, I love Dark Horse hardcovers, like their Hellboy stuff, which is super like wide as well.
Yeah.
I have
I got them right there. Yeah, I love them.
Love those, man. Yeah, for sure. So let's see. So you did a lot of DC stuff, right? So you jumped into a Sinestro book following up what Jeff Johns, right?
Yeah. So it was following up a lot of the Green Lantern stuff he had done. So right after, it was a little ways after New 52 started, a couple of years after they started New 52. They asked me if I wanted to do a Sinestro core book.
It seems like right up your alley, though, right? He's kind of like a
yeah, it was perfect. And at first it was interesting because the original plan was that Sinestro wouldn't be in the book. It would just be the Sinestro core. And then somewhere along the way, plans were able to shift, and I was able to include Sinestro in the book. And yeah, that was it's still one of my favorite things I ever did for DC. I love that book so much. And I love that character in a big way. But yeah, I was able to sort of it was definitely superhero, cosmic superhero. Or super villain, because one of the things I wanted to make sure in that book was that Sinestro wasn't a hero. He was a villain, but cosmic super villain, but very dark. And I got to play with a lot of great characters and do some interesting things with the DC space stuff for sure.
Yeah, man. So you've been able to jump around and play with all these toys in the comic book world. That's so awesome. When you start a new story, like, what's the process? Do you have like an idea of the overall thing, and then you kind of fill in the blanks, or is there even something you can explain when it comes to that?
Well, it's different for every story. Most of the time, if you're, let's say I'm working on a book for Marvel or DC with one of their characters, most of the time they'll come and say, we want you to do, a book about Magneto. But that's all. They don't say we want these things to happen. They'll tell me what's going on in the world, maybe, like if the Marvel universe, if there's some major element that I have to make sure I'm incorporating and things like that.
Like the mutants have declared themselves a sovereign nation. Go.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. If they tell me that, if you leave that part out, I'm probably not going to come up with a story that fits, because I need to know. I need those details. And then once I do that, sometimes I'll do a lot of reading about those characters. I'll read previous stories that they've appeared in, sort of the iconic stories that they've been in. And then I just kind of do a lot of free writing. I kind of open a notebook up and I just start writing ideas down and just let it go. And somewhere on the page, an idea will start to surface up at some point once I'm writing it. And then I find that, and I just follow that thread until I figure out if there's a real story there or not. Sometimes it's like with that Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, I knew I wanted to do something where Deadpool was sort of a serial killer. So that was I knew that right away, and I kind of followed that. But yeah, it's just about developing whatever I think I can do that speaks to the character's history, but also is something different and something new. We talked about Shadow Man earlier, and Shadow Man, for instance, is a great example, because they said, hey, Valiant asked me what I would do with Shadow Man, and I sat down and I thought about the previous stories, and then I kind of tried to figure out a way to tell new stories in the Shadow Man world for new readers, and tell them in a different way. And every issue, so one of the things I wanted to do with Shadow Man right off the bat, I had the idea that every issue would kind of be sort of a standalone story.
Oh, I see.
And so they all tie into a bigger story arc, but you can read issue 1 or issue 4 and have a complete story in those pages. And cool. That helped me define what I wanted to do with the book.
That's a great way to look at it. Now, do you know or have an idea if it's going to be an ongoing title, or if it's going to be a limited series, or how does that work?
Sometimes sometimes they'll tell you, hey, it's going to be 5 issues, sometimes 4 issues. If it's already planned as a mini series. Sometimes it's an ongoing, but the thing I've had to learn the hard way a lot of times is I need to really think about books. Every series is a limited series unless people really buy it. when I've done a few books that, ended around issue 11 or 12, and the publishers have told me, that's a huge success in comics. You should be, be excited that it lasted 11 or 12 issues. And that's great. But the problem with that is I always plan for, if I think I've got it, potential for 30, 40, 50 issues, that's what I want to plan for. I want to plan for that many issues. So I've gotten myself into a little bit of trouble time, and that I have to tie up certain elements before I was really ready to.
Somebody called me and I lost you for a second.
All right.
Sorry about that. All right, so you want to try to have like 30, 40 issues planned, and then sometimes you got to call an audible and shorten it up, or
yeah, you might have to shorten up. So now I try to think of it a little bit. I try to think in smaller chunks. Yeah, I want to tell much larger stories and longer stories, and I want to set myself up for that. But even if I'm told it's an ongoing, I still plan in a segmented out. So if something happens and the series ends, or I can't do the series anymore, I can at least draw it to a close and have something satisfying for the reader, regardless.
That's cool. Yeah. It's almost like some little jumping off points, like just in case we can leave right here.
It doesn't come back. Here you go.
I had a really good question from our Facebook group. They're aspiring writer, and they said, "What's Cullen Bunn's remedy for writer's block?"
I used to say that there's no such thing as writer's block. And that was really my die-hard line in the sand for a long time, was there's no such thing as writer's block. And maybe I was a little bit full of shit, because that's not true. There is writer's block. And the thing is, though, if you're going to be a writer, you can't let that stop you. So for me, I can't afford writer's block because I don't get paid if I don't finish scripts. I have a few things that I do when it really hits me hard. I'll pick up comics that I think of as like just amazing stories that really get my juices flowing no matter what. I read it and I'm excited, or I read a short story, or I read a piece of a novel that kind of has always gotten me excited about writing. And I think most writers have those. They have a book that they can think about when they say, when I read this, I want to go write something. So I can read an issue of Planetary or The Authority or Alan Moore Swamp Thing, and those books make me want to write. So I'll do that, and that sometimes will kickstart me a little bit. Or a book or something. I'll listen to music that might be in the right vein. But sometimes I just have to sit and start writing. And sometimes because you have writer's block, the stuff that you write in that moment is crap. But it kind of greases the wheel a little bit and it allows you to move forward.
It seems like I like how you said you kind of like to read the prior stuff. That sounds like it might help too. Like, all right, what happens next?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You can go back and because for me, I guess sometimes if I get stuck, a lot of times is I forgot what's happened before, or I'm not sure where I can, how do I get that going? And yeah, I'll go back and read the stuff that I've done before. I don't like reading my own scripts, so I'll read the comics. I dislike, for whatever reason, once I've written it and I've proofed it and I've done the pass to rewrite, I don't like looking at those scripts again.
So you mentioned like Alan Moore, I guess Warren Ellis did Planetary, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are some other writers like that you just really look up to, that you enjoy reading?
So Warren Ellis and Alan Moore are up at the top of the list. I like Jason Aaron's work a lot. I think Jason tells some great stories, and I find a lot of inspiration in his stuff. I think Jeff Johns did some as for superhero stuff in a bigger universe. Jeff was at there was a moment in time, especially right before I really broke in, where he was at the top of his game. I mean, I don't know that anybody could touch him. Grant Morrison, I think I love Grant Morrison. I love the zaniness and weirdness of his stories. And then Bill Mantlo from Old School Comics. Bill Mantlow's hard to beat as well. So is Chris Claremont. I mean, so all of that stuff, the stuff that got me into comics to begin with, So then I have to look, when I think about that, the stuff that really got me into comics and, was Bill Mantlo with Micronauts and Rom, and Claremont with X-Men, and Jim Starlin with Dreadstar. Those are books that are writers that really inspired me as well.
Did you see the Dreadstar box set that they just came out?
Oh yeah, it's out in the hall.
You got it?
It's on a bookcase. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So we asked about writers. How about artists? What artists really do it for you?
Oh, there's so many. Bernie Wrightson is the first artist that I remember. I was little reading an issue of Plop from DC, and he did one of the stories in Plop, and that was the first artist that I connected with the art, and that I was able to say, that's a Bernie Wrightson story when I looked at it. But Bernie Wrightson, Michael Golden, Art Adams, Dan Brereton, those are the artists. Just some of the artists that really drew me in. Paul Smith, John Byrne, again, because those were the stories I was reading. Right. At a very formative point in my life. So
is it safe to say the Bronze Age is your favorite era of comics?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's. I think it was probably Alan Moore that said this, but if you ask someone what their favorite era of comics is, usually they're going to tell you the era that they got into comics, where they really loved it. So yeah, it had to be, the 80s. I was reading comics in the 70s, and I love those, but early 80s, mid 80s, that's where I became a diehard collector of comics for a long time. Mm-hmm. I got rid of most of those books, unfortunately, but I was a big collector for a long while.
Yeah, and it's hard to be a collector then when you're in it, right? Because now it's okay, I got to worry about writing the next thing that people are going to collect. I can't worry about collecting for myself as much.
I still collect a little. I still. That's awesome. I just during this whole lockdown thing, I just went through all my random boxes of comics and sorted them out, and put things out and made want lists of the books that I need and the things that I want to get bound into hardcover and stuff like that. So I'm still into it. Not like I was as a kid, but yeah, there's certain titles I'm still very much into.
For sure. All right, so I definitely want to give an opportunity for the guys in the chat to ask some questions here, sure. And I have a couple of pop fast questions, little quick ones. So we're gonna see. Man, these might get controversial though.
All right, well,
are you ready?
Hold up. Now let's.
You don't have to answer. You can plead the fifth on any of these if you like.
All right, I'll creatively plead the fifth.
All right, first one: Seinfeld or Friends?
Dang, Seinfeld. I think I liked them both, but I think Seinfeld.
All right, cool. You're on my side. All right, pizza with pepperoni or without?
With. Come on.
Dang. Water, room temp or ice cold?
Cold water.
Well, and Cullen, you are my kind of guy. Let me just say, all right, rock music or rap music?
Rock.
Got you. Batman the animated series or X-Men the animated series?
There's a good question. If you'd asked me back in the day, I would have said X-Men, but Batman was a far superior show. I love the X-Men series, but Batman was a much better show.
The Batman animated series will make you a DC guy if you grew up with Marvel,
Yeah.
All right, so let me ask you, this is a perfect...
Okay. I was going to say, Batman's a series I'd buy on DVD. I don't know that I'd buy the X-Men series on DVD. Although I did...
They got X-Men on Disney Plus right now.
That's right, it is. I did go to Pizza Hut and get the VHS when Pizza Hut was doing the VHS giveaways way back when.
That's when Pizza Hut was it.
That's right.
Last flash question, then I'm going to check the chat. If you could only collect one thing, what would you rather collect? Hardcover editions or statues?
Hardcover editions.
Yeah, I think for the writer that makes a lot of sense. You know what? I think this, not that this was a test or anything, but you passed my personal test.
All right, good. Thank goodness. That's all I was really worried about.
All right, let's take a look at the chat here. Matt Dasco, Seinfeld is the correct answer. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Hold on, I got to proofread these things first.
All right.
All right, let's see. Yeah, Bruce was saying Invincible and Six Gun would be great animated shows for Amazon Prime. I think Invincibles, they're working on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one that's been worked on for that they've toyed with for a while. But yeah, I think Invincible would definitely be a cool animated show.
Let's see here. What is Influence Films asking? Cullen, what qualities do you think a main character needs to have to make readers care about them or like them? Oh, that's a good one.
That is a good one. First of all, I don't know that readers have to like a main character. And I don't think that I, as a writer, have to like or agree with the main character that I'm writing. But what they do have to have is there has to be at least something that you can understand where they're coming from. You have to, even if they're complete, even if they're a complete villain, you have to be able to give them something that the reader can say, okay, I can understand that character, and in the scope of the story, I can follow them and hope they succeed. But yeah, you have to have this just something, some bit of not even necessarily sympathy, but you have to have empathy and be able to understand where these characters are coming from. Magneto, for instance, is a villain, but we all get why Magneto goes to the extremes he goes to. I mean, what has happened in his life has been nothing but tragedy after tragedy, and we understand why he does these horrible things he does. Sinestro has a goal. He's awful, but what he really wants is peace. He just has a too authoritative approach to it. And let's be honest, we can all understand moments where we've been a little too hard-lined about something. And I think readers can grasp that, even though they know I don't want to be Sinestro when I grow up. He's awful, but you can at least understand why he's doing the things the way he does.
Yeah, it's good writing when you can sit back and look at the villain and be like, it's kind of making sense.
Yeah.
All right, so I like this one too. So let's say if Marvel called up and say, listen, Donnie is done with Venom. He's over here doing Thor. Will you pick up Venom again? Is that something that you would have interest in?
Yeah, I would. You want to know why? I hope Donnie Cates is listening right now. When I was in Chicago a couple of months ago, Donnie walked up to me at a bar and he said, Cullen, how many issues of Venom and Venom-related books did you write? And I said, well, I don't know. I haven't added them up. He's like, could you add it up for me? I was like, well, I can. Why? And he said, because I think I'm about to beat your record. And he was so proud that he was about to top the Cullen Bunn record of Venom and Venom-related books. So, yeah, I'll write any Venom, if for no other reason, just to get him back off that record.
I know Donnie was so competitive with the number of books on the title. So hold on. Is he going to beat Jason Aaron on Thor now?
Well, I'm sure that's what he wants. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, no, but aside from that, all kidding aside, yeah, I'd love to write Venom again. Here's the thing. I like Eddie Brock Venom a great deal, but man, oh man, I love Flash Thompson Venom. And I'd like to fix
a lot of depth.
I like Agent Venom. And that's the thing, I love Eddie Venom, classic Venom, but man, I like Agent Venom so much.
Yeah, I mean, Coach Thompson, I thought that was an awesome dynamic too, and the war hero, and I liked it in the beginning of the run too when he used to Hulk out, right, and he had to sedate the symbiote.
Yeah, for sure.
So David Presley's asking a good question, and you mentioned having those Hellboy library editions. He's saying he would love to see you work on Hellboy with Mike.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That might be a little that might be so intimidating that I couldn't handle it. I mean, there's another creator who's a huge influence for me. And I love those Hellboy and I love BPRD. That would be awesome, but I may freeze up in intimidation if that were the case.
Yeah, that kind of ties in here with Killian, because you mentioned working with Rick Remender on that Venom run. Mike Mignola would be a little intimidating. Are there any other writers that you would like to team up with? Is it just that list that we talked about earlier of the Alan Moores and?
There are plenty of other writers I'd do something with. If it came down to it, if we had an idea that that really meshed, that we came up with together and we meshed creatively. I would love to work with CM Punk again on something. We wrote some issues of Drax for Marvel a while ago, and I think we had a really good time writing it. But and there's some writers right now that I'm working on some stuff with. But it all depends on if the story, if we have a story to tell together. So yeah, maybe.
Gotcha. Ben saying it seemed like you posted a teaser to be in the Black Hammer verse with Lemire. When could we hear more about that?
Lemire, that guy. Now there's my mortal enemy, Jeff Lemire. It did look like I posted a teaser about something with Black Hammer, didn't it? But I don't know when you're going to hear more about it. I probably wasn't supposed to post that teaser.
You and Jeff Lemire are going for the hardest working man in comic award, I think, or writing the most titles at once.
Yeah, there's a few of us, Donnie's probably pretty high up there too. Donnie and Charles Soule and Jeff and Matt Kent. We all, we haven't added them up yet, but we're trying.
Yeah, you and Donnie and Jeff, like those are. I see that on the book. I know I'm good. I'm like, all right, cool. Let's jump in. Cool, man. So thank you so much for jumping on the show here. I'm definitely looking forward to reading Shadow Man. I know that you're going to start that new ongoing with Valiant. Super excited to see what you continue to bring us. Hopefully, we get some real Omnibus. So that you don't have to go custom bind them. Come on, Marvel, you guys get it together.
Some fans might call it an Omnibum, but maybe that should be my new handle, Omnibum. But
with the Deadpool popularity, they should just do Deadpool by Cullen Bunn Omnibus. It's gonna double dip. It's been done before, so no worries.
Double dips, yeah. So.
Everyone double dips, and we buy it because that's right. How we do. I appreciate everybody in the chat that came through to watch us live. Everyone who's watching on the replay here and asking questions. Cullen, do you have anything you want to say before we send off? Or
no, I was going to say thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for everybody who hopped on or who's watching this now. I appreciate it. I appreciate the support. Everybody, stay safe out there, and you can find me on if you want to reach out. You can find me on Twitter at Cullen Bunn is probably the best place to communicate with me for sure.
And it looks like we might start getting new comics in about 2 weeks or so. So hopefully we'll start to see more of this stuff come out. We'll do more reviews. We'll get more Cullen Bunn stuff on the channel. And thanks for watching, you guys. Appreciate it. Stay minty fresh.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.